Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CTA webinar series. I'm Jerry Brinegar, your webinar track chair. It is the hope that these webinars will help contribute to CTA's goals of bringing practitioners and business partners together to discuss relevant corrections topics, to expand the connection beyond the annual conference, to extend the conversation beyond IT, and through the series, to increase value to all associated with the corrections domain. In this reproduction of the inaugural webinar, the New Mexico Corrections Department will be demonstrating their PREA incident module. In my role at NMCD, I have the privilege of helping manage a group of highly talented and motivated IT professionals, two of which are here with me to demonstrate. Mr. Niels van Hecke, Lead Application Developer, and Ms. Laura Nicolosi, Lead Business Analyst. Hello.
Hello.
In the original webinar, two additional agency business representatives joined us that I would also like to acknowledge. Ms. Jillian Shane, Inspector General, and Ms. Robin Brooke, Statewide PREA Coordinator. So just to run through the agenda, we've just completed introductions. We'll briefly talk about the history of the project, then we'll jump right into the demonstration of the PREA incident module functionality. We'll then shift to show how we're generating the XML based on the PREA Data Standard for reporting purposes. And as this is a recording of the original webinar, we'll skip over the question and housekeeping items. So in 2014, the PREA Working Group through IJIS completed a new National Consensus-Based Data Standard to support Prison Rape Elimination Act PREA requirements and processes, the National PREA Data Standard. New Mexico, along with Arkansas and Iowa, was selected to participate in this pilot implementation. Project kickoff occurred in the spring of 2015, and early project activities included identifying and forming project scope and receiving XML training, which was coordinated by IJIS and was extremely helpful. Assistance from IJIS during this planning stage, as well as throughout the project, was instrumental. NMCD determined that we wanted to improve the business functionality for incident management within our OMS, in addition to meeting the XML generation standard identified for the project. We therefore held a series of joint requirements planning sessions with the statewide PREA coordinator, which was, at different points in time, both Jillian and Robin, as well as other staff responsible for incident management across the state, to ensure that we both understood their needs and determine how we could improve the process systematically. It was also during the late fall and winter of 2015 that we completed the XML export that would accept data from a number of sources and convert that data to the PREA data standard based on need. After requirements, we began development activities, and after a series of iterative sprints to confirm development was meeting established requirements, we began testing and ultimately production rollout to the pilot site in September of this year. Statewide training activities are planned, and full implementation with all prison sites is scheduled for January 2018. So without further ado, I'll turn over the presentation to Niels and Laura so we can take a look.
Thanks, Eric. So in 2015, we were given the XML specifications from IJIS that were based off of the NEAM, the National Information Exchange Model. The NEAM is a standard for exchanging law enforcement data between agencies. The NEAM is an XML model heavily based on extensibility and inheritance that can objectively describe any given situation. Our current OMS system is programmed in Java, so we use the standard JAXB library to generate Java classes. Because JAXB classes can be messy, we opted to create a library that ingests information and produces the JAXB equivalent. The library can be used in any application and requires no modifications to use. The library can produce JAXB elements, stream, or file output depending on the needs of the calling system. The different types of information generated are incident allegation, incident report, incident review, the SSV, which is the Survey of Sexual Violence. It is the statistical information gathered annually by the federal government, and audit information. I'll now hand it over to Laura, who will showcase the application.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Good afternoon. I'm going to walk through the application now using scenarios that have already been created. I'll start on the global incident search screen, and you can search by multiple ways. So I can first show you the search by, you can search by the incident case number. You can also search by the OPS case number. And then you can refine the search by choosing multiple search criteria.
So in this case, if you select either the first or second option and put the specific case number, you'd be redirected directly to that incident. Otherwise, you would receive a list below based on the matches to the search criteria.
Right. Thank you, Jerry. So in this case, using the multiple search criteria, I know that the incident date was sometime after August 1st. And I also know the complex was Central New Mexico Correctional Facility at level 1. And in addition, I also know that the assigned officer to this case was Mr. John Chavez. So I'm just going to look for him. Select John, and it's populated. And so now I'll click on the Find Incident, and it brings back two incidents. So I'll now clear the search, and let's say I want to search for all pending items. So this brings up a list of all the pending items, and show you on this screen as well that all the columns can be sorted, ascending or descending. So for instance, if you were wanting to sort by the date or by the complex alphabetical, ascending and descending order. So I'll now clear the search results, and I'm going to walk through an incident that has been completed but not closed. So I'm going to search from November 20th to the 29th of November. Find incident, and 5 incidents show up. So just to review the icons beside each incident, the first one is the View Edit, and this will take you to the main incident allegation screen. The second icon is the People Involved, which takes you right to the persons involved in the incident. The third icon is the Debriefing, and the fourth is the Start Review. And we'll be going through all of these throughout the application. I'll be demonstrating all these screens. And also just to point out, if you notice, the first 2 incidents are in a pending report status, and therefore the SART review is grayed out, not available, because the SART review is not available and open until the incident has been closed. So the last 3 have been closed, and it's open for edit. So I'll open up the first one, so View Edit, and this takes me to the Incident Allegation Report Details screen. On this screen, the details of the incident are documented. When and where did the incident happen? What type of incident? Were there any injuries? Is this a high-profile case, etc.? And just to point out a few things on the screen, the case number is, the incident case number is pre-populated, and it's auto-generated by the system and cannot be modified. And when an incident is first created, certain fields are immediately locked, such as incident category, complex, incident date and time, facility, and date the incident was reported. And the report status automatically defaults to pending, and this is because an incident is in pending status until it is closed. And just below that, the date of closure is grayed out because an incident cannot be closed with a pending status. And it would open up if I change this, so I will change just to show you. If I was to change that to substantiated, the date of closure then opens up. And if you were to select a high-profile case, this incident then would only be accessed by higher levels of security, for instance, the PREA coordinator. And high-profile cases are flagged by the business based on different factors. And beside the different fields, different drop boxes appear depending on what is selected. So if I was to select no for injury, the drop box no longer appears. And currently the incident location for this incident was in the victim cellar room, so the corresponding drop box to the right shows those details. If I was to change that, so I'm going to select a few just to show you, and while I'm showing you that, you can select multiple locations by selecting one and then clicking on the control button. So I'm going to select in a common area, in an instructional area, and also off-site location. And when I do that, you notice that 3 new drop boxes appear that are relevant to the incident location chosen. And this situation, while uncommon, actually could happen if an incident occurred in multiple locations before the incident was reported, and they can all be documented on one incident. So I'll clear this now, just clear all the changes that we made. And staying on this screen, just to show you, there are 3 tabs at the bottom where information is entered: law enforcement, agencies notified, and evidence. And I'll click on the evidence button where we would have attached, this is where files would be uploaded and attached. So let's see. And there are different types of files that have been attached here. And different types of files can be uploaded from a simple Word document to a video or audio file. And each evidence file can be linked to a specific person involved in the incident, and this is entered at the time the incident is created. So I'll now show you how to add evidence and link it to a specific person. So you go to the Browse and select your file, and this upload type is a video. And a description. And if we wanted to choose, the list of the people involved in the incident shows up, so we'll select Joe Smith and submit. And save successful. So throughout the application, anytime you make a change or an entry, it will tell you that the save was successful. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at this video.
Here come the troops.
Okay, so we'll close out the video and we'll close out the evidence listing form window to go back to the main incident allegation screen. Also on this screen is the checklist, and I'll open that up. The checklist is a list of action items required to be completed by the shift supervisor, warden, and the director. And one item, for example, for the shift supervisor would be to place the unit on lockdown, and the warden would alert local law enforcement. And once an item is checked on the checklist, it is locked and cannot be unchecked. As you see at the top, it's grayed out and locked. So I'll now go back to the incident. The print incident report has all the information about the incident, and it's an internal report used by the prisons. The print OPS referral document is a document sent to our internal investigation department, Office of Professional Standards. And this document contains all of the information that's required to start the investigation. So I'll now close this. And I'll now go to the persons involved section. So the persons involved section is where all the individuals involved in the incident are entered: inmate, perpetrator, victim, staff, volunteers. And I'll open the first person to show you the information on the screen. So this person was entered as an inmate and victim. And as you can see, even though this incident is still open and can be edited in some spots, some information is locked and cannot be modified once the initial record has been saved. The person, kind, role, their name, their offender and prison number, and the location that they're housed at. And there are multiple tabs where the information is entered. So at the bottom here on the evidence tab, this is where evidence is documented and attached. The abuse, this is where injuries are documented. Medical, what type of treatment or tests were administered. SANE stands for Sexual Assault Nurse Examiners, and this is details of the medical examination. And follow-ups tab, so any follow-up activities are documented here. When the person kind is an inmate and the role is a victim, like this one, the print victim notification letter button will appear on the screen, so I'll go ahead and open that up. The victim notification letter is sent to the inmate, and the verbiage of the letter varies depending where in the process this incident is. So an initial letter is sent out, and subsequent letters are sent out until the incident is closed. And this one was the initial letter, paragraph 3. This letter is to inform you an investigation has begun in this matter. And the letter is sent to the prison location where the inmate resides. However, if the inmate is in transit from one prison location to another, the letter will be sent to the prison location where they are transferring to. So I'll close out of the victim letter. And if the person kind is an inmate, the retaliation button review will appear as well. So I'll open that up. The retaliation review is an ongoing process, and this remains open even after an incident is closed. The retaliation review presents the elapsed number of days from the date the incident was reported. So in this case, the date the monitoring began was 11/22/2017, which was when it was reported. And on the 29th of November, a review was done, so it was a 7-day review, and we're now 37 days from the 22nd, so that's why it opens up 37-day review, and you would enter in here, and again, tomorrow if you'd open this up, it would be showing the counter would be 38 review, a 38 day.
Of course, if if this were a real incident, we would be following based on our policy and the PREA standard, which is
15, 30, 60, 90-day review. Plus our internal policy is to continue doing retaliation reviews until the incident is actually completed as well. So that can go on indefinitely, essentially.
Okay. Thank you, Niels and Jerry. So I'm going to go back to person, and then I'm going to cancel and go back to the person involved listing. And now I want to just show you how to add a new person and show some differences depending on what you select for person kind and person role. So to add a new person, you would click on the Add Person icon. And if you click right into the calendar or into the date box, it brings up today's date. And you have the calendar available if you wanted to choose a different date. So we'll choose here person kind. If person kind is, person kind with either victim or perpetrator, there's additional information required. The evidence tab, abuse, the medical, and the SANE, as I showed you on the previous screen. If you select volunteer or contractor, you can see additional information is required because the person is not in our, it's not in the database as either a staff or an inmate number. So this information is required, and you wouldn't be able to save the record until you enter this.
So specifically for perpetrators that are non-staff members, or actually any perpetrator, the person's gender, their age, and their ethnicity are required in the SSB, which we'll be going over later. But that is why you have to fill it in for volunteers and contractors, because it's not something that we already have in our system.
Thanks, Niels. As well, I was going to show you if we enter, we can also enter if somebody witnessed something, but we weren't sure of the identity of the person, we just had limited information. So say a volunteer was in and we weren't sure, we would click on unknown, and maybe we had someone saw someone and they knew it was a male and they said they were Hispanic. And that's all they had. So let's save that. And then if we go back to the listing, so it shows now it was with the name as just a comma because there is no name and there's no information. That's the limited information we had. But we can go in and edit this until the incident is completely closed. Maybe some more information has come to light where someone said, no, he wasn't he wasn't Hispanic, he was white, so that can be changed and saved. And now that information is saved. And as well, if further information is known later where now we have a name, we can uncheck the unknown and we would be able to enter a name and title and location if that was as well known. And so we'll just save that. And now when I go back to the listing, that unknown person now is Mr. John Jones. So I'm going to now go back to the incident and we'll move on to the debriefing. So I'll click the debriefing. The debriefing is a review of the incident. What impact did the incident have on staff and offenders? What corrective actions were taken and what actions remain to be taken? What are the plans for improvement to avoid another incident? The individuals required for this review are the warden, the deputy warden, chief of security, and the area supervisor. And the signee title auto-populates for each of those and cannot be edited. A name and whether they were present or absent is mandatory for each signee. You can also add additional persons, and I'll demonstrate this along with the signature functionality next during the START review. A sign-in sheet is also required for the debriefing, and it will not allow you to save the record without attaching one, and this will also be shown during the START review. The next step would be the START review, which is the review by the sexual assaults response team. This can't be done until the incident is closed, so we'll go ahead and close the incident now. So I'll click on cancel and back to incident. And I'll change the status from pending to substantiated. And you notice now that I've changed the report status from pending, the date of closure opens up. So we'll enter today's date, and I'll click Add Save. And we get the validation message asking us if we are sure we want to close, and we'll say yes. And again, we get the validation showing that the save was successful. So the incident is now closed, and as you can see, the fields are locked for editing. And nothing can be edited at this point. But if we scroll down, the START review button is now available. So now we'll complete the START review. As I previously mentioned, the START review is a review by the sexual abuse response team. It covers such things as, did the victim and perpetrator undergo a SANE exam? Was the staffing in the area adequate? What recommendations have been put forward? So the review date, I'll put in today's date. The incident motivated by race. Okay, and if the questions all have to be answered with either yes or no, and if the question requires an explanation in the text box, it states this. For example, in question 1, it says, if yes, explain. So I will put something in, and at the same time, I'm going to demonstrate the spell check functionality that's throughout the application. So the first word is spelled wrong, so it's underlined in red, and the icon to the right, the ABC, will provide you with a spell check. So there's the, I want spell S-P-E-L-L, so I'm going to change that. And now you see that the correct word is in the text box, and the red underline is now gone. So we'll complete the rest of the questions. We'll say yes for this. And for the third question, yes. And for the third question, I'm going to select no, but I'm not going to put anything in the text box so that I show you the data validation that is also throughout the application. Once you save, it's going to tell you what you're missing. So I'm also going to now, I'll show you the signature functionality. So as you saw in the debriefing, and here it's evident where the assignees that are required for the START review have all been auto-populated. And if I try to click on that, warden, it won't let me, it's pre-populated. So warden all the way down through to the behavioral, to the investigator, area supervisor are pre-populated and have to be completed. So there's two ways to find the individual. You click on the find staff, and if we put in as much information as you know, And it will bring up a list of individuals, so we'll pick 12 tests as our individual. And even though that's been populated, that can be changed up until the SART review has been saved. So for each signature, you also have to indicate whether they're present or absent. It will default to present. Another way to search for an individual is the second icon through the people involved. So this list for the people involved comes from both the person involved listing, where I showed you how to enter a new person, and also any people who are signees on the debriefing. It brings all of those together. So in this listing, the first user, test 1, was entered as the person involved, and the others were part of the debriefing. So we'll go ahead and select test 6, and it populates it. There's also, you can also add additional signees if there were additional people part of the SART that are not any of the mandatory by clicking on the plus button. And if I scroll down to the bottom, this is where it allows you to enter new people, and it defaults to is NMCD staff, but if I was to deselect that, then additional information is required. The person, kind, first and last name would have to be entered. If you want to exit out of this and don't want to add an additional person, you simply click on the minus box and it will disappear. And a sign-in sheet is also required for the SART as well as when I showed you on the debriefing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, show you the data validation by trying to add and save. We're missing text in the last question as well. We're missing 6 signatures in the sign-in sheet, so that should all come up on our message. And it does. So
you also see that there's a question that wasn't answered at all. So in addition to all of the items, you also see that there's one that got skipped over inadvertently.
It got skipped. Thank you, Jerry. And there it is right there. So we missed that one, and it told us. So what I'll do now is I will put in something so that that won't come up. And as well, I'm going to add a sign-in sheet. So you would just browse, go to your folder, attach it. So now when I save, everything should be there except for the 6. It'll still ask us for those 6 signatures, which it does. So again, the data validation is a wonderful thing, and it's available throughout the whole application, so the user doesn't have to guess as to what's missing. It tells them exactly. So lastly, I'm going to show you the SART review report, and this is available once the SART's closed. And I won't close this SART, so I'm just going to go back to the incident search, and on incident number 6, if you can see, the SART review is in blue, so it's available. So like I was showing you, you can go directly to that by clicking on that icon. So the SART review report is a review of the incident per the PREA standard and is a consolidation of data from the incident and the SART review. In addition, the SART review report can also pull reports from other modules. And in this case, it pulled the SRNS, which is our Sexual Risk Indicator Screening Report, from a different module altogether. And the SRNS is done for every inmate at the time of intake. And I'll just scroll down to show you where that information is. Yeah, right there. There it is.
There we go.
Yeah, so SRNS, it gives the information on the date that it was done and the results. So this one, low risk of sexual victimization and high risk on the sexually aggressive behavior. And Niels will actually be showing you the SRNS in his XML when he goes through that. So I wanted to thank you for your time. That completes the walkthrough of the application. And if you have any questions, we'll be giving you an email address where you can send those questions later. But now I'm going to turn it back to Niels, and he'll review the XML generation process. Do you think we should redo it?
Thanks, Laura. So just before getting into the XML specifications, I'd like to talk about some questions that came up during the original meeting. The largest group of questions about the actual storage of the incident information, so all of the evidence, where it's located, and how we display our audio and video files was brought up. So the choice that we made for video was the HTML player. We chose this because it can do streaming, which you cannot do if you directly link to a file, so that we could reduce the load on our servers. And the servers that we use are all virtual, so we're able to expand as needed for storage or for additional execution space. So what you can see here is that this is the HTML5 player, and in the back end there's a little bit of mojo in order to make the streaming functional. So I'll now go into the XML generation process. So again, because the JAXB generated classes are messy, we opted to create an external library that could generate the JAXB objects for us without having to worry within our OMS itself about how to generate well-formed JAXB objects. The PREA Data Standards lay out objects to be exchanged that in turn wrap objects that extend the NEAM subset specifications laid out by IJIS. Our library basically is a set of adapters that wraps a specific JAXB exchange element to be produced. The class structure of a library is a simplified version of the generated JAXB classes, mostly because the NEAM defines many child and derivative objects that for all intents and purposes do not need to be directly messed with. Each adapter has a toJAXB element function that returns a JAXB version of the object that adapter wraps, which is called on each adapter instance member to generate a full and complete object. Once an object has been filled, toString, toFile, and toStream functions can be used according to the needed result. One thing to note is that because the PREA and SSV specifications have two different subsets of the NEAM that conflict with one another, the two schema specifications had to be split using an XJB file to specify the resulting namespaces. I'm now going to be stepping through the different objects that we have implemented. Each object can be queried through RESTful Jersey service, as laid out by the GRA documentation on RESTful services. For the purpose of this demonstration, authentication and handshaking mechanisms won't be used. I'll quickly recap the types generated by the system, which are the incident allegation, incident report, incident review, the SSV, which again is the survey of sexual violence, and audit information. I'll now briefly show you an incident in our system and then display it through the different PREA data standards. The ID that we're looking for, or that I'm going to be showing you, is that one, so showcasing that we can search by an ID. And I'll pull up the specified incident. So what you'll see here is that it's a staff sexual misconduct type. You'll notice that there are no injuries. You can see that the incident was reported by another inmate. Incident date is the same. And you'll see in evidence that it has details. So the objects that are generated by the library are as follows. So the first one is actually the inmate intake process. So this is the inmate intake process, a risk screening for sexual violence. This is handled through our current OMS, and the data points are mapped to the sexual risk screening type, which you'll see is this type here. This has information such as the person's height, their build, stuff of that nature. And it is relative to the risk for being a predator or being a victim. The initial reporting of an incident is done through the incident allegation type. So you'll notice that it says that it's pending. There's different kinds of reporters. So reporter 2 was the other inmate. And you'll see that the incident ID is stored in the incident reference type. So the next type is the incident report type. This is data pertaining to the incident in general. Same but slightly different information. The information about the initial response to the incident is done through the incident response type. And then after an incident is closed, the review of said incident is done through the incident review type. And this is the equivalent to the SART review that we were showing earlier. So this is various different kinds of questions and what the answers to those specific questions were, as well as the motivation for that particular incident. Now go over the SSV stuff. So reporting at year-end, so at the end of the year we report data on the number, kind, and results of investigations, and that's done through the survey sexual violence state prison type, which you'll see here. Now what you'll notice is down here in the staff sexual harassment, staff sexual misconduct section, you'll see that there's one ongoing investigation, and that is our equivalent to our pending state. And there's one total. I'll now go back into our incident that I was showing you. I'm going to close this. So I'm going to say that it was substantiated, give it an OPS case number, and I'll give it a date closure of today. So I'll now refresh this. And you'll notice that ongoing is now 0, substantiated is 1, total is still 1. So this is, the total and the overall breakdown of all the various incidents that occurred throughout a year. Audits that pull random sets of incidents for review are done through the survey sexual violence incident audit type. The documentation on exactly what parameters for this is those are sort of fuzzy at the moment. So our current implementation grabs count incidents for a given year, or it grabs all incidents for that year if the count specified is larger than the number that actually occurred. So you'll see here that we had said that there are count 5. So you'll notice that there are 5 incidents that are here. I'm now going to refresh this and show you that it does in fact pull down different random sets of data for the specified year.
This will just take a few moments to refresh.
Yeah, this is running on our development system, which has limited resources compared to our production system, so it takes a little bit longer.
Okay.
And what you'll see is that the specific incidents that got pulled down are different from what were there before. And again, we said that we wanted 5, and we got 5. So that's the end of the XML generation process. I'm now going to hand this back over to Jerry for closing comments.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Laura. Good job. So as I stated a bit ago, since this is a reenactment of the original webinar, we won't be doing the questions, but if you do have additional questions for us, if you could go ahead and send those to trackchair4@correctionstech.org. That will come to me, and I'll get answers for you. And that concludes our demonstration of the PREA incident module of NMCD. As your webinar track chair, and on behalf of CTA, I'd like to thank you for listening in today. The CTA board plans to hold at least one additional webinar in the spring of 2018 prior to the CTA annual conference. We'll look forward to seeing you then. And if you'd like to volunteer, or if you have an idea for a future webinar topic, please send them to the email address above as well. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.